Self-worth and self-esteem are two issues most Black gay men have probably had to wrestle with in some way or another in different parts of our lives. We're going to talk about how it impacts us in dating and relationships. And here to have this conversation with us is one of our favorite guests. He's been on here a lot, so we obviously love him. He is the one and only dating coach, Amari Ice. Amari Ice, how are you?
I am doing well. Pleasure to be back again. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your expertise.
According to the Global Love Institute, I am the first Black gay certified matchmaker and science-based dating coach in the world. I am a number one best-selling author. My first book is called Lasting Love at Last: The Gay Guide to Attracting the Relationship of Your Dreams. My second book is on the way out. Stay tuned for those dates, but it'll be called Love Alchemy, and it's all about transforming your love blocks into relationship gold. I've worked with over 1,000 gay singles and helping them develop their dating skills and find love. And the receipts are receding. So check me out on social media, Prince Amari on Instagram, or take my dating skills quiz at datingskillquiz.com. So that's me.
You know, you've been doing this for quite a while, and I'm pretty sure you study and understand the trends. First, how has dating changed for Black gay men, since you've been studying how we date?
I love this question because a lot of times we collectively we assume certain things are different and that other things are not. But what's true is when we look at human nature, human psychology hasn't changed much in thousands of years, right? So in other words, the way we psychologically connect, the way we emotionally attach to people, the way we form bonds and relationships at our core is still the same as it's been for thousands and thousands of years. Now, culture shifts, right? Our habits, our technology changes, and so the ability to meet people online has expanded our ability to connect with people that we might not normally meet just, out in the wild. But ultimately, the way that we connect, the way that we bond, the way that we form intimate connections with each other is still the same outside of whatever particular method of connection or introduction we might have to someone. And so I think it's important to recognize that, especially when we talk about dating apps, all apps are just tools and they're marketing tools specifically. And so the better you are at using a tool, the better the results you're going to get from that tool. So if we struggle with digital dating, especially, we might first want to look at, have I learned how to actually use this platform? Do I know how to write an effective dating profile? Do I know how to choose pictures that are actually going to get the engagement that I'm looking for? Right. And so again, using an app is a skill, but once you got that, or if you're going to meet someone in person, if you know how to connect with people, if you know how to start conversations, the rest of building a relationship is the same as it's always been.
One thing that I have noticed is that a lot of us have a hard time approaching each other to express interest. What do you think that's about?
This is all about two things: self-confidence and self-esteem. And we often talk
Mm,
about them as if they're the same, but they're actually completely different. I'll start with self-confidence. So, we often think of confidence as like, oh, I just need to be more confident to do the thing. But confidence is not a state of mind. You can't just decide to be confident. Okay. Confidence is only ever based on the evidence of our actions. I did something, it worked. I did again, it worked again. And that pattern in the data is what creates confidence, right? And confidence and trust are synonyms. They mean the same thing. So if I trust somebody, I have confidence in them. If I trust myself, I have confidence in myself. But if I don't have the skills, if what I'm doing isn't working, it's hard to be confident in that particular skill or in myself as it relates to the result I'm trying to accomplish with that skill. Okay. So that's the first piece. The second piece
mm,
is self esteem. And this is specifically, do I like myself or not? Right? How I feel about
mm.
me. And so, sure, our self confidence and self esteem are related. If I have skills, if I'm getting the results that I'm looking for, then I might like that about myself. And so my esteem can go up. However, your self esteem can also be low, even if you have great skills, because it's also about the way that we are looking at ourselves in any particular moment. So self esteem fluctuates based on the day. Did we gain a little weight? Did we lose a little weight? Did we win today? Did we not win? Right? Do we feel loved? Do we feel accomplished? Do we feel successful? Self esteem is all about our feelings about ourselves. And so when we
Hmm.
look at the way that we then navigate dating and the challenges that we have, both of those things have to be held closely. And we, one, have to look at our skills because the number one reason anybody is single is because they're trying to have a level 25 relationship with level three dating skills, right? Love isn't a fairy tale, it's much more like a video game in that regard. And if we don't have the
Yeah.
dating skills that we need, like using the app, if we're going to date online, right? Or reaching out to people, going up to people. If we don't have those skills, it's hard to be confident when it comes to doing the things that those skills would allow us to do. And so a lot of gay men struggle to go up to people because they don't feel confident in their ability to start conversations. And also, they might be attaching too much pressure to the conversation itself. They might think that, oh, I need to say the right thing so that this person becomes my husband. And you're jumping too far in the future. The purpose of this conversation is to just see if I want to go on a date with you rather than to be like, oh my God, I got to say the right thing so that he wants to be with me forever. We're not even at that point. You don't even know if you like them yet, right? So we just want to take one step at a time. And sometimes our skills haven't been sharpened enough to recognize what step we're actually taking. And so then we take a step that was a little too big for where our skills were. And then that erodes at our self esteem. And now we are afraid to do it again. When in reality, the only way you build skills and confidence is by taking action. You got to do the thing, see if it worked. If not, adjust what you did and try something else. That's the only way to build confidence. And again, by virtue of building
Hmm.
confidence, you also will improve your self esteem too.
So we talked about self-confidence and we have talked about self-esteem. Where does self-worth come into those two equations?
So self worth is specifically the value that I place on who I am, right? And so you can think of it as a combination of your self confidence and self esteem, but it really has a huge self esteem lens in that it is the evaluation that I'm giving to all the things that I know about myself. If I have low self worth, I don't believe that I am worth fighting for. I don't believe I'm worth healing for. I don't believe I'm worth being loved, right? Like that can be an example of what that looks like if we have low self-esteem, but it's also a spectrum and a gradient. So just because it's lower doesn't mean it's that low necessarily. But when we think of the value that we place on ourselves, we have to ask ourselves, what are we using to measure that value? And a lot of times we're using some arbitrary lens or we're moving the goalpost or we're thinking about what other people might think about us rather than what they actually said about us. Like there's just so many things that go into do we value us? But if we start from the place of who am I in the first place? And do I like that person? And am I working toward becoming a person I like if I don't like who I am? Or am I just being too hard on myself and I just need to list things I do like about myself? And so that would be the first thing I suggest. Anybody who's struggling with self-esteem, we tend to take a all or nothing approach. If I don't like everything, then I can't like anything. And that perfectionism is what kind of creates a big issue for us. Because if we think about any sort of other ism, racism, sexism, heterosexism, right? All of those are ways that we discriminate against people based on who they are. Perfectionism is how we discriminate against ourselves for not
Mm.
being what our version of God is. And for some of us, God was our parents. For some of us, God is a deity. For some of us, God is, the culture that we live in. But I use God as like this big term of all powerful, whatever that looks like in our personal lives. But we are trying to measure ourselves against this immeasurable thing. And that is what then makes us discriminate against ourselves. Because if I can't be perfect, then I can't be worth anything. It's kind of the framing that we use there. But it's just discrimination against ourselves. It's not real.
When we get online, we see all of these outrageous standards that we hold for each other as black gay men in dating. You got to make this amount of money. Your dick got to be a certain size. Your ass got to be a certain size. You got to be able to fuck like a porn star. Excuse my language. All these different things. And so, how do we navigate that? Like, how would you suggest, especially for our younger folks? And even some of our older ones who see this kind of thing and then get intimidated about navigating our dating scenes.
The only belief that you have to find the love that you desire is that you are lovable as you are right now. Anytime you feel like I have to do this first, I have to, like I was saying before, I gotta lose weight first, I gotta make more money first, I gotta get some credential first. All of that is just procrastination, right? That's a way we're avoiding the truth, which is that we are already lovable. But if I believe I have to do anything to prove that I am worthy of love, I have to ignore the fact that I already am. You're already lovable as you are. But if you accept that, then that means you don't have to spend all this energy and time doing all this extra stuff, right? You don't have to play this game as if, your partner is a prize that you're going to put on a pedestal. You don't have to play that game. If you see yourself as lovable as you are, you get to connect with a real person, and you're going to show up as yourself to be connected with as a real person. And so when we talk about unconditional love that we desire from someone else, that starts with us. I
Yeah.
have to first unconditionally accept me, or I won't unconditionally accept someone else's unconditional love of me. We can make this very plain, very practical. If you want to know how easily or not you accept love, just ask yourself how easy it is for you to accept compliments. And if you struggle to accept compliments, more than likely you also struggle to accept love in a romantic sense, because love is the biggest compliment that anyone could ever give us.
Yeah.
But again, you're lovable as you are already. And the funny thing about the way the mind works, whatever you choose to believe is going to dictate what you do. So if you don't believe that, you're going to ignore all the evidence that proves that that is true, right? So it's going to be hard to be confident because we're ignoring the evidence.
Let's shift this a little bit now. We were
Yes.
talking about, self-esteem and that sort of thing. We got to get into the mean girl syndrome that's in our community. All the Regina Georges that are running around in our community. Why do we see some gay men, some black gay men, in this conversation, showboat how many people are interested in them that they turn down and that sort of thing? Like what is up with that?
At
How
our
many
core, we
people they can
all,
reject?
yeah, at our core, we all want to be loved. And if we think we have to prove ourselves lovable, each of us kind of picks a particular lane of what that proof looks like. For some of us, it's look how smart I am. See, I'm lovable now. For others, it's look how many other people like me. See, I'm likable, right? And so it just depends on the person. But anytime that we feel the need to put others down to prop ourselves up, that always means that our self-esteem is low. Because if I already love myself, I don't need to involve anybody else in the equation because my worth was never in question and it's not related to anybody else. Right. And so the approach that I always recommend we take is one of compassion. Right. If you think about people who say that they have really great communication skills or great emotional management skills, for instance, but if they then judge other people for not having skills that are that great, we have to ask questions. And I'll say this from another perspective. We're adults, right? We don't expect 5-year-olds to have the emotional maturity that we have, right? To have the ability to make sound decisions in the way that we can. We're expecting them to lose it sometimes, to, have a little tantrum every once in a while, to not know how to handle the big feelings with the small words that they have at that point in their lives, right? But we don't approach it like, oh my God, you're 5, grow up. We're like, you're a child right now, right? And the only thing that I can do to help you is to model what it looks like and teach you what those skills are, right? So we approach 5-year-olds with a level of compassion that is appropriate for their skill level and awareness level, right? Cool. Just because you're an adult chronologically doesn't mean you're an adult emotionally. And in the
Mm,
same way that we approach 5-year-olds with compassion, when we recognize that anybody in our experience, however old they are, doesn't have the skills, the maturity, emotionally, whatever, we need to take that same level of compassion because obviously they don't know what to do in this situation. And so judging people for skills they haven't yet developed or haven't things that they haven't learned or been taught does not actually help them. It just makes you look like an asshole. So when we look at our level of compassion for other people, we always go back to, if I'm judging someone else, what is this saying about me? What am I judging in myself that I'm noticing in another person? Because it often goes back to something about us that we don't like. And so there's a level of our self-esteem attached to tearing down someone else's every single time.
There are some people who we see this conversation quite a bit. Like if you're on Facebook, especially, and you're in one of the black gay, community groups or conversation groups about uh, being in great relationships with people, and then 3 to 6 months down the line, they freak out and ghost them. That kind of thing. I guess that's a level of avoidance or something like that. What would you ascribe that to, that kind of behavior? And then also, how should someone navigate that behavior? And how do you not allow that to impact your self worth and self esteem?
This is a great question. So I'll start with how we would categorize that, right? So the core of all healthy romantic connections is emotional connection. And those emotional skills that we have or don't are going to determine success or failure in our relationships. And so men in particular struggle a lot in relationships. And when you have a gay relationship, struggle even more because culturally we are taught to ignore our emotions, right? We're taught that our emotions are bad. And so a lot of men actually have fear around their own emotions that we don't articulate because we can't be afraid because again we're supposed to not have emotions in the first place, right? So if we are not honoring our emotions, we often will take actions that will seem rash and impulsive to kind of get out of those feelings, right? Rather than dealing with it directly, we're trying to escape. And sometimes that escape looks like ghosting, right? Sometimes that
Wow.
escape looks like drinking. Sometimes that escape looks like any sort of addiction to something that keeps us from having to be present in the discomfort that we're feeling. And so, as men, especially in America, period, regardless of our orientation, race, or whatever, men have a lot of discomfort. It's why men commit so much crime because we don't know how to deal with our feelings because we haven't been taught. Fast forward that to being in the relationship that looks great at the beginning. Sometimes there's also a level of, because we want to be perfect, that perfectionism, and we also don't know how to manage our emotions. We are trying to act the part. And so the lights are on, but no one's home. We're here, but we're not really here until we reach a point where we just can't take it anymore because the emotional discomfort is so great. Because again, relationships are going to require us to have hard conversations sometimes. They're going to require us to be vulnerable. They're going to require us to be seen. And if I don't like who I am, I'm for sure going to be afraid or uncomfortable showing that person to someone else. But the thing about relationships and also running a business is if you really want to see yourself, do either of those two things because it's going to show you more than just about anything else in a very clear way, right? All of life reflects us back to us, but those two scenarios really show you yourself in a way that other things might not magnify as clearly. That's what's going on. And in terms of what do we do, how do we keep that from eroding our self-esteem if we go through an experience that happens where someone ghosts us or anything like that, or there's even just a breakup. Maybe it wasn't ghosting, but it seemed great and then it ended and we just are, torn to pieces. What we have to remember is that we're humans and we got to give ourselves grace
Yeah.
is the first piece, right? So the perfectionism piece, we rarely give ourselves grace if we're trying to be perfect. But if I don't give me grace, who is? And if I don't give me grace, when will I ever have the space to grow and heal from the things that I've experienced? You don't have space without grace. So that's the first piece. You got to give yourself grace if you want to heal from anything. And then two, because of the history of our culture traumatizing little boys to not have emotions. Because remember, trauma is not the experience that you went through. Trauma is cutting off the emotions related to the experience that you went through. And so as little boys, we were all traumatized. Many of us, maybe not all, but like most of us were traumatized to cut off our emotions, period. And so there's a level of trauma that men are dealing with and living through that if they don't intentionally take the steps to learn some emotional management skills, go to therapy, don't go to therapy, like whatever the tool is, like that's an option, but it's really about learning the skills. And therapy is one of the easiest ways to learn those skills, so that you can sit with, manage, feel, regulate your emotions yourself. But if you never learn those skills, it will always be someone else's responsibility to regulate your emotions. You'll make everybody else responsible for how you're feeling rather than taking responsibility for your own feelings, right? It's somebody else's fault that I'm sad. It's somebody else's fault that I'm angry. It's their fault because they were on bullshit versus I am a strong and capable human being who knows how to manage myself even when things are hard, right? But without
Yeah.
those skills, you don't know how to do that because a breakup is no dissimilar to any other ending. And the only constant in life is that things are going to change. Every single change we go through is also a grief experience. We have to make peace with the old reality that we aren't living anymore and also have emotional acceptance of the new reality we're in. And that's all a breakup is. It's just a change. It's a transition from what we were used to. But if we don't know how to manage grief, if we don't know how to manage those emotions, then it will always feel overwhelming and unsurmountable.
And this also applies to say, say it was great, but then they, left you and 2 weeks later you see them on Instagram posting somebody else that's the love of their life and that kind of thing. You would also apply that to a situation like that as well.
Yeah, what we have to recognize is people are going to be people. And just because they didn't have the skills to have a healthy relationship with you doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Hmm.
In the same way that just because your parents didn't have the skills to parent you effectively, just because they didn't have the skills to love you effectively, doesn't mean you're unlovable or that there's something wrong with you. And I think that that is kind of the core of a lot of our challenges. We don't recognize the difference between other people's abilities and our worth. Like that's the key. Like what they are capable of is not a reflection on if you're good enough. They just don't have the capacity, and that's not your fault or your responsibility to give it to them. And so it is making peace with the reality that they just not a good fit for you, but there's somebody else who is. But in order for you to see that, that also often means you have to make peace with where your skills are right now and do some work to improve them so that you can get better results when you take action and have more confidence and see the reality that you actually want to live.
This especially applies in the big cities where people feel like, they say all these different crazy things about their dating experiences.
Yeah, the more people you meet, the more things you're gonna see, right? But the proportionately is still the same. If you date 10 people, right, two of them are gonna look like they're a good fit, and one of them you end up really in a long-term relationship with because they have the actual skills, right? Like let's just use this as a benchmark example. I'm not saying this is real for everybody's life, but let's just say 20% good, 80% not a good fit for you. And when you now have dated 100 people, 20 were great, 80 weren't. Sometimes you go through most of the 80 first,
Hmm.
right? But also it's going to depend on your skills because a lot of times if we take a dating app for example, a lot of us are swiping right saying, "Oh, I want to meet this person," when their profile clearly said they didn't have the range from the beginning, and so we're expecting to get orange juice from these lemons that clearly told us they were lemons on the list, right? Like their profile said that they were not a good fit for you, but you still invest in anyway. Like that's your skill, not their authenticity. They were clear. This is not what I want. I'm looking for friends, fun, and more, right? I'm not looking for a relationship. And you're like, but you're so cute, and maybe I can change you. And you taking responsibility for the wrong thing. You can't change them. But you're not taking responsibility for how you feel. Because now when you go through this with that person and they ghost you gonna say it's something wrong with them when you weren't paying attention to the ghosting behaviors that were clear at the beginning, but it's often because you just didn't realize that they were clear from the beginning.
Can we admit that some of us also do like a little bit of mess? Some of us do like a little bit of toxicity sometimes.
But we have to own that. We can't, because again, if we are saying everything is somebody else's fault, we don't
Yeah.
take any responsibility. But if we like a little mess, that means things are going to be a little messy sometimes. But we like it. So we participated in it. So it can't just be the other person's fault because we gave consent for the mess.
So that means that we also have to learn the skills and the acceptance to also navigate those things that we like that can sometimes be a bit of a rocky road.
Absolutely. If you want a relationship to last, even if there's a mess, that means you have to develop the skills to deal with the mess. But like that's not a surprise. It's just logic.
Yeah.
This is a hard situation. If I improve my skills, I'll be able to deal with that hard situation. But we often don't look at it like that. But it's actually pretty simple.
Last question. I think if there were any words of encouragement that you would have for Black gay men who are working to develop the self-worth, the self-esteem, the self-confidence, and the skills, what would your words of encouragement be to our community?
The first thing I would recommend is however you need to reinforce this in your memory, if you need to put it on a sticky note, if you need to put it in your calendar and set a reminder every day, it is the sentence that I am lovable just as I am right now. You got to accept that belief. That's the one. Two, to develop the skills, there are a couple things you can do. Go to as many dating workshops as you can. Go to, I don't know where that go to as many dating workshops as you can. Work with coaches if you can afford to, right? Like get out there and do read as many books as you can on developing dating skills, but don't just listen to people who are also struggling, who don't know anything about what is happening, who don't know how to use the apps, right? Like take a workshop on how to use the app effectively, right? Like any of those things. But if we are tired of getting the results that we've been getting and we just keep doing the same thing we've been doing and we don't look for expert assistance or support or knowledge or information, what we are saying with our actions is that we consent to the mess.
Mhm.
But if you don't actually want this to happen, you have to do something different. And that often looks like improving your skills with the help of a professional, of a book, of a workshop, something, or a self-study course that you create yourself. But like you have to improve the skills to improve the confidence. It's the only way.